Howdy folks, welcome to this week's Ag Report. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the supply chain in our food supply chain. You've probably been hearing a lot about the effects that COVID-19 has been having on that. So I want to kind of give you a little snapshot, maybe crib notes you might say, about kind of what that looks like, what it means. So here in America, we have the safest, most abundant, cheapest food supply in the world. Now that is got a very complex supply chain built with it. So I want to kind of explain a little bit about what that looks like. We talked in a previous interview with an order buyer for the packers and feed yards and what that's been seeing to him. So if you can envision, like in the 80s, the domino rallies, okay? And they push that one domino and this magnificent thing unfolds. So if one domino's out of place, then the whole thing kind of stops and you have to reset. So if you can kind of envision that as our supply chain, it's not that we don't have adequate fruits, vegetables, meats in the supply chain. It's where and how it's packaged. So let me give you a little glimpse of kind of what that looks like. So through the COVID-19 and the shelters in place and just some infection numbers and things like that, different processors, whether that be meat processors or fruit and vegetable processors, milk processors, that kind of thing, they have had to scale back or temporarily shut down so that their production is not as high as it normally is. The other big thing that we talked about earlier is the shift in demand between wholesale going to retail establishments, restaurants and that kind of stuff, to retail going to grocery stores. That's totally different packaging, labeling, that kind of stuff. So with all of that shift going on, what that has done is put a little hiccup or a bubble in the pipeline, in the flow of that supply, okay? So what you are seeing, a lot of you are seeing maybe milk being dumped, or you're hearing about depopulation of chickens and hogs and different things like that. Well, what is going on? Because America is set on a free enterprise system that starts with the consumer and goes backwards. So for years and years, the consumer has set what things look like, meaning the size of your apples or your tomatoes, the color, the size of the meat, the size of your pork chops, different things like that. And then that goes back to the processor. So they know the public wants a certain type. And so then they go back to the producer, the farmer, the rancher, and say, okay, look, we need this size to be able to do. Well, what that means like for the producer is, if you're a vegetable producer, they may have 48-hour window to harvest that particular crop of vegetable. Earlier than 48 hours, it's too small. They won't buy it. Later than 48 hours, it's too large. They won't buy it either. So there's a very fine window, and that is criteria that has been set by the end user, the customers that come into those stores and shop. Now, what does that mean? Well, like I say, it is supply and demand and its efficiency. So all through that process, the packager, they're buying particular packages that are a certain size to accommodate the certain size steak or fruit and vegetable. So there is a long line of things that have been set up according to that size, because a lot of people are like, well, just hold those pigs till they get bigger. Just hold that lettuce till it gets bigger and things open back up and sell it. Well, it's not that easy, because now the packers and the packagers, they don't have a box that will fit in any longer, because they've been buying a particular box for a particular size because that's what the customer wanted on the end. So that's kind of where all that has been set up. I can speak to this because Over the years, I've been on many farm tours all across the United States and in Canada, and talked firsthand with different producers and things like that. So that's kind of, I hope, can maybe answer a little question of well, why don't they just this? Why don't they just wait a little longer and let them get bigger? Aside from the fact that it costs more money for that producer to feed that animal, and if you're talking about a vegetable crop, it's perishable; it won't last anyways. So that's a little that. Now, what does that mean for you at the store? Well, anytime there's a little hiccup along the way like that, then that is going to, in a couple of weeks, show up in the store. So you may have already seen some signs being put up, limit to meat products, that kind of stuff. Again, it doesn't mean that we don't have the meat. It's just the supply chain kind of reworking itself and revamping to supply the new market, basically, that has kind of shifted in there. So remember, when you go to the stores, try not to go, well, I'm going to buy, for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, something like that, because then that just shortchanges what your neighbor can do. If we all kind of ration ourselves and just buy accordingly for our family to get through, say a week at a time, then this is going to smooth out. Your American farmers and ranchers and growers, they are ever adapting and a resilient group. And the suppliers are working hard to shift things around to keep this flow going. I also wanted to share with you an email that I got Thursday evening at 5 o'clock, April the 30th. So, a temporary rule change to the Texas Department of State Health Services is needed to allow meat sales to occur. 8 Texas state senators have requested a temporary issue of a rule change. This is by Senators Perry, Flores, Hall, Mendez, Silliger, Lucio Jr., Colkhurst, and Fannin. What they are asking to do is they are asking a rule change so that small custom processors that are state regulated and not USDA inspected are allowed to temporarily do some processing and be able to sell it retail or to the public. That is to help offset the load at these USDA plants in there, so that it can help smooth out some of that supply chain hiccup that may be going on. So reach out to your Texas senators, support them in that rule change, that temporary rule change, to help kind of adapt a little bit on there. So again, I hope that this helps you a little bit and gives you a little bit of an insight to all of the little news blurbs that you may be getting about what is going on in the food chain and things like that. Again, we appreciate you tuning in. Shoot questions to the Waxahachie Sun if you have any. Y'all take care now.